when actually that's how we've always been. We were born of Mother Nature and immersed in it all this time, and somehow we've lost that connection, and the distance has increased. But now we're realizing the need to curtail that distance. It's really about weaving modern life and nature together, blending outdoor and in, and in so doing, kind of blending past and future.
So nature by design is free flowing to build with and build upon. Urbanization is the constant across the world, and going forward in this process, not just destroy or displace nature to make a place for the humans, but do it connected into the ecosystem.
Circular economy was kind of the ultimate expression of biomimicry. We kind of recognized that we're surrounded by this regenerative ecosystem and that we could be embracing ourselves.
That is the way nature creates in the world. She creates life to create more life.
Sort of ironically, the sort of greatest progression of humanity is actually about returning to our roots, returning to the earth.
Nature requires us to be intentional, thoughtful, and sustainable.
Welcome, Olympia. Welcome to Chronicles of the Galaxy. Lovely to see you again.
Yes, thank you so much, Matt. How have you been so far? It's been a
Excellent,
while.
excellent. Very well. How have you been?
I've missed you. I'm good. I'm okay. I keep wanting to talk about downer things. So if you will, can I just like lay lay down all of the things that are bothering me with the world
Please,
today?
please hit me.
Yes? Okay. So do you think we are in an AI bubble?
Oh, well, I
Is
mean, everyone seems to think so. And again, we often uh, struggle to point out that we know nothing. We're experts in very few things. We're generalists in many. So I'm not the voice of reason on this, but certainly the experts seem to believe that we are in an AI bubble. And I wonder, I mean, you see a lot of AI, but not a huge amount of AI traction. So that kind of adds up. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like it's there were these the journalists who've drawn the map of how AI money is changing hands. So it's like OpenAI is at the middle of it, doing like these very big deals with Nvidia, with Broadcom, with which anybody out there, and it's all in like the billions and trillions. But the fact that you'd need to make almost $1 trillion you need to be in the revenue in trillions of dollars to make the math work is scary with more than half the infrastructure not built. Those are some really, really big bets.
Yeah,
So just
yeah.
it,
And as you say, it's kind of all within the AI industry, so it's kind of almost founded on nothing. And just
mhm,
because you did a deal with them, who did a deal with
yeah.
them,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that that's a truly functional ecosystem. It's almost like a pyramid scheme of sorts. So, and we know
Right?
how those end up.
Exactly. Just at the start of this year, everyone's like going AI crazy, everyone's doing AI hiring, and now those things have proven to be wrong. You need people in the loop. More often than not, AI has been shitty. And if you don't catch it, you're walking away with those wrong answers. Like, if you whether it's a research, whether it's a summation, a summary, some kind, anything. So there is definitely a degradation of the quality of the AI work that we started off with at the start of this year. So which tells me that it's more of the training data that they are now being trained, because initially it was all human generated content that they were trained on, and now I'm sure there is some AI data in the mix, and so bad content is going to give you bad results. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
shit in, shit out. I mean,
yes.
it's an interesting one, and as you say, functionally there are some concerns there, but I think emotionally as well. People want people still, and I think we tend to take quite a strong kind of consumer lens on things, and when you do that, I think beyond the inaccuracies that you just mentioned, people still somewhat reject this future, and I think that's going to be the biggest stumbling block moving forwards. Be interesting to see how that evolves, but I think for now, yeah, there's not a massive appetite there.
I mean, we can't count on people to continue being people. I mean, how are we all
People
of a
will
sudden?
always be people.
It is. I mean, can you it's incredible to me if I feel like I'm living in an Ocean's movie.
Okay,
How
maybe.
how does how does the Louvre happen?
Yeah,
How was such how was it so easy to get in there, steal something of such great value, and then leave out just the same way without really? I mean, there are these videos that are popping up now of people like, oh, they're leaving, and just think there's there is it seems so comical. It just feels like, the human world correcting itself in the face of AI. It's like, oh,
yeah,
here,
yeah,
here's
yeah.
something interesting.
Yeah, that's very cool. You're right. And maybe I'm be sure it's not an episode of Oceans. Maybe they are just filming a new one and people forgot. Just like, um, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But you're right. It's a very charming, lovely reminder of just of mankind at its sort of most hapless, and most ingenious at the same time. So it's yeah, it's great.
Hapless in terms of hapless. So I feel like this is going to be the last one. I mean, we're not going to touch what we touched on last time because that's just a downer of its own kind.
Mm.
So we're going to stay away from anything pumpkin spice related. But in worlds of things I didn't think that was going to happen, I need to get into baseball. Do you know anything about it?
I know nothing about baseball. Apparently, it's one of those sports. Once you're in it, you love it, but it's somewhat impenetrable from my point of view. Tell me more.
No, so my Toronto network is going crazy because the Toronto Blue Jays um, are playing in the MLB. Like they've fought their way back, and they're now in something called the World Series, playing against
World Series, yeah, yeah.
the they're playing against the LA Dodgers, and they've had two games so far, and they won the first one. The Dodgers just rectified it yesterday to level the scores 1-1. And so somehow I now know who Otani is, and I care that everybody is swept up in what a Springer Dinger is, which I do not ask me what that
Like,
is.
dang, I have no idea what that is. I'm not sure I want to know, but it's great that you're swept up in it. That's good. And we need this little bit of escapism in these difficult times. And yeah, go the Blue Jays.
Blue Jays, yeah, Blue Jays, yeah. So I did not think I was gonna care about baseball at all, but now it's just it's got a bat and ball, so it's very similar. But instead of us running back and forth on the pitch, they go round the base, a square, rectangle, hex, diamond shaped base.
Diamond, I think they call it a diamond. Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
yeah. I know bits and bobs about it, but yeah, I've never really watched it. I have to say,
okay,
I'm sure there was many decades ago. I don't know if you remember Ian Botham.
yeah,
He was an accomplished all-rounder England cricketer, one of our best ever batsmen, one of our best ever bowlers. He was kind of like a Ben Stokes back in the day, in the
okay,
sort of
okay.
80s, I think. And I'm sure they once made a documentary. It's the kind of thing that you might be able to find on YouTube, but equally perhaps never made it to YouTube. But I'm sure they made a short documentary where he went over to the US and played baseball to sort of see what could the sort of best cricketer in the world
Wow.
make. What would they make of baseball? And I think he just absolutely every pitch he just stomped out the stadium, and they were just like, "Oh, okay, yeah, he can do this."
Okay.
And he was kind of like the same as you. Well, it's a bat, it's a ball.
See, as high a compliment as that can be, I feel like that's just putting down Ian Watson just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
Um, that is incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna look that up because that is exactly what I thought. I was like, oh, because they're like, oh, this ball is coming at such a speed, and these guys get hit, and so I'm just like, okay, but that's what we do in cricket. I mean, we do that, and people catch
Yeah,
it. They don't have gloves. I mean, the wicketkeeper has gloves, but everybody else just catches the ball with their bare hands. But yes, thanks,
yeah,
Matt.
check it out. I mean, they're obviously flinging it. There's no bounce involved. It's like you're literally throwing it with all your might, and then there's the curve balls and all the knuckle balls, and I don't know which makes it more complex, I guess. But yeah,
Kind of sounds like Kuldeep Yadav bowling, to be honest. It's just like,
it does. Yeah, yeah. I'd much rather face a knuckleball than a Yadav ball. But anyway,
okay, I mean, we did have a quick chat about cricket right before we got on, so we will not get back into it. But I'm hoping that the England players get out of whatever those card projections were, because that is not the story of the England I know.
no, it's just a bad day, and you guys have struggled a little bit in Australia as well. It's just
Terrible. Mhm.
it's just finding their feet. They'll be fine in the end, I'm sure.
Yes. In that case, let us get into our main topic for today. You have teased me with this for a month, almost a month now. You brought this up, and then we kept on. It hasn't been a month, but it was your suggestion. So we're back on the train of Matt suggesting brilliant things for us to talk about. So do you have a setup for us if you want to take into it because it was one of those things that I have been obsessed about for a while, but it's also the most fun that I've had preparing for our conversation today.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I have a setup of sorts, but hopefully between us we can get to the topic and then, as ever, wrangle our way through it.
Yep.
We touched on AI, for example. Obviously the world today is hell bent on sort of progress and progress through tech. I guess technology-driven progression. It just feels like what humanity was meant to do, what was put on this earth to achieve, and we're trying everything we can to kind of move humanity forwards through all sorts of innovation and invention. But I think increasingly we're also starting to realize that the secrets, the answers, lie not in the world of tech and actually in the world of nature. And increasingly now, the most sort of forward thinking solutions are born of and inspired by the natural world. So that's really what we're going to look at today. In terms of connecting it back to now and what's going on in the world, I mean, obviously, it's a huge part of innovation is design and invention. But I think particularly, when you think about the loss of Jane Goodall, who passed maybe sort of 10 days ago now, she had this wonderful quote, which was, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." So as we look ahead, as we try and bring about change and transformation as a society, but also as individuals, it's interesting that we can perhaps, just like Jane did, turn to the natural world for that inspiration and really look for the core topic of today, which is biomimicry, and find solutions in that natural world.
Oh my God, yes. Thank you so much, Matt. And I'm hoping that through our conversation we can lay down some kind of a guide map, certainly for ourselves, but maybe for anybody else listening, for how to be inspired by nature going forward in all of the things that we do. Okay, but let's get into it. Is there a specific reason why this popped in your head? Maybe I don't know. I feel like in my head, you were watching some kind of cartoon or some kind of funny thing was going on, and you're like, this is gonna be perfect for the pod. That's how we came up with it. Is
If
that is
if
that the
if
case?
only there was that sort of logic to it, Olympia. No, I think it's just something that's been on my mind a lot
Yeah.
of late. I spend quite a lot of time. I live in Dubai, as we know, where nature is sort of scarce, but there is nonetheless the opportunity to enjoy it, particularly as we move into winter. So I do spend as much time as possible out in the world of nature and really trying to kind of absorb it and enjoy it deeply. And I think that's actually the kind of key principle of biomimicry is to really to open your eyes and witness the wonder of nature and really try and kind of appreciate it. And in more scientific terms, really try and understand it and almost pull it apart and then start to reflect that understanding back into the everyday world and everyday opportunities and problems that we face as humanity. So yeah, really just something that's been on my mind and also something that I've kind of spotted moving around in the world as things cool down a little bit here in Dubai. What are your thoughts on it? It's something I know that you're excited about and inspired by. Why did you feel this was a great opportunity for us in the pod?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like you said, born out of our environments that we're living in, and having lived in the Middle East for so long, and then moved to Canada, and then now having spent a little bit in India, the difference that having green around us and nature around us, it makes it that much more special to me, knowing what exists in certain places and what doesn't. So it's for a while now, since grad school in New York, I was obsessed with walkability. To me, one of the best markers of a city, or of an urban development, is how walkable is the place. Despite how safe, beautiful, and clear the pavements, and having the infrastructure ready for walkability, Dubai, for most of 10 out of 12 months, it's not, you can't walk to places. You can, but you risk sunburn, you risk too much heat, and that is just the nature of the desert. That's just where we are. That's a location thing. And Canada also has that very similar thing, but they have the great nature. So when I was there, I really enjoyed being able to just walk everywhere. Public transport is great, that's fine, but I was really able to appreciate just cutting through parks and just going, walking about any kind of green space, any kind of built up space, any kind of unbuilt up space, and just being marveling at just how much green environment their nature has to offer. That is
Yeah, and I
unfortunately
think.
not the case in India.
Sorry, no, carry on, please.
No, so I was saying the contrast for me is that the compound that I am in at my parents' place, it is surrounded by green. So the inside of it has a giant green area. There are walkways, tree-lined streets, and all of those things, which is great. But I know for a fact that I cannot step outside of this compound and go for a walk anywhere. So India, for all its green nature and everything that it has to offer, is completely unwalkable, and it is such a shame that our development towards growing and establishing ourselves has been at the cost of cutting down nature, to and remove walkability completely from the equation.
Yeah, and I'm glad you start with walkability because I think that is a key kind of first step, excuse the pun, but around kind of embracing nature. And I think if we think about the broader scheme of biophilia, which is really around immersion in nature, that's been happening for some time. And if you look at cities like Singapore and even Dubai is now moving that way, we're really trying to bring greenery into the modern world and make sure that we live side by side with it. And it's a shame you're not seeing that in India, but I'm sure it will come. But it's strange that we have to go kind of past something to get to that point when actually that's how we've always been. We were born of Mother Nature and immersed in it all this time, and somehow we've lost that connection, and the distance has increased. But I think now we're realizing the need to curtail that distance and really move beyond just simple greenifying, and it's really about weaving modern life and nature together, blending outdoor and in, and in so doing kind of blending past and future. Like I say, we've come from nature, we were always at one with it, and we've lost that connection, and really now the future is about reconnecting and forging more permanent connection with the earth.
I hope that's true because as of 2018, 55% of the world was in urban centers. And going forward, urbanization is the trend as more as not I mean, I guess rural communities come online and get connected and develop their infrastructure, and develop in general. If we're not able to do that, it's just going to cost us that much more to save the planet, because I don't think we've done a great job of urbanization while still also preserving the planet. I just talked about India not being a very walkable place, and that is primarily because in our haste to be developed as per Western standards, we've now shifted into just being captured in the image of what Western society deems as being developed. So tall buildings and skyscrapers and concrete and steel and glass. What that done is just heated up the place. But there was an architect, a British Indian architect, Lawrence Baker. He was all about sustainable living and sustainable housing and sustainable development, and affordably so for the lower and middle income people. And one of his favorite, the Baker ways of developing, was you do not displace nature, you build with and around it. So if there was a plot or a land that he was building on in India, if there are trees and forests, he would build around and with that, instead of tearing it down to make place for concrete and slabs. He would rely on local, and borrowed from nature tools and materials like stone and wood and clay and terracotta. And those are the ones that are still sustainable. So those are the ones, those houses in those areas that he still built are the ones that are still relatively cool, relatively in sync with nature, as opposed to the ones that have just gone for the urbanization success rate without a care about what happens to the larger ecosystem and the larger habitat in place.
And that's fantastic. But we know that's the way we should be doing things. This is what we used to do. It's literally how we developed our communities. So, this isn't about learning anything new. It's more kind of relearning what we already learnt in the past and re-understanding what we already knew to be the right way to do things and reconnecting with that. I shared with you an interview from an old teacher of mine, a gentleman called Mark T. Jones, who's sadly no longer with us, but he had this really powerful message around biophilia, which is about rewilding our lives. And again, he's not talking about wilding, he's talking about rewilding. And it's more of a regression back to a previous state where we really embraced nature and really wove it through our lives. And I think that's the key point here, is that actually, sort of ironically, For the sort of greatest progression of humanity is actually about regression. It's really about returning to our roots and sort of returning to the earth. And those architects and those city planners and those leaders that understand that. And I think again, places like Singapore, unlike Dubai now, where we've seen the huge concrete glistening towers, etc. But now we're getting beyond that and recognizing that we can then start to blend nature into that and move towards something really balanced and much more sustainable. And I think this is hopefully the next phase of humanity, next phase of destination development and human development overall.
I love that, Matt. And the rewilding bit, it's kind of sad to think that humans have developed in a way that we now need rewilding. And like that is the call of the moment, the need of the hour. It's like nature, biomimicry. The person who coined the term, Janine Bayes, her entire ideology stems from the fact that nature, by the way it exists, is generous and circular. It builds and develops everything in and around of it, and not just the one thing. And she gives this great example of a lake by her house where she and her business partner, when they first visited the lake, it was a boxed in lake, and it all everything around it was dying. And she, in an effort to do the rewilding, in an effort to revitalize that place, she looked at nearby streams and nearby water sources, and figured out that the ones that are in good shape, the water that is healthy and not rotting, are not boxed in. And she went back to her property, and she found that there were four streams that wove in through her lake that were cut off. They were blocked off. So nature by design is free flowing, and it's circular. It's generous in what it takes, but it also gives equally. Just like almost any kind of animal or plant that you take an example of, it builds in and upon itself. Nothing. There's no waste. The concept of waste doesn't exist in nature, because it's material or fuel or foundation for something else in nature to build with and build upon.
Yeah, that's lovely. I love that concept of generosity. And as you say, that means there is no such thing as waste. It just becomes an input into the next or the neighboring sort of product. So yeah, that's a lovely thought. And it's interesting. I mean, you and I are both fascinated by design. We both work closely with it. Whether it's digital design, experience design, brand design, etc. And when you think about it, obviously the natural world and natural selection, as it is really the ultimate iterative design. It's kind of like A/B testing, but more like A/Z testing. It's just millions and billions of micro experiments all running in parallel, kind of constantly self-optimizing and sort of self-enhancing. And it's so bizarre that we think that we would come along, and we are just a mere product of just one of those iterative efforts, but we suddenly believe that we can do better. And then over time, we learn that we can't. We can't. Why would we? Why would we ever be able to do better? And why would we try and do better when we're embedded in a world that is where that sort of design excellence, that optimal design expression, as you say, that generous design is all around us. So all we need to do is open our eyes and embrace and mimic. And here we are with our theme of biomimicry. I wonder, do you have any? What are your kind of favorite examples of biomimicry? Did you come across
Oh,
anything interesting in that,
yes.
I suppose?
Okay, awesome. So I love that, because it obviously we're filled in and around with these examples. Almost there's a just because I'm gonna bring architecture back into this mix, because that is my particular obsession with nature, and co-designing with nature. I think the back of a lotus leaf. So the lotus leaf, it's got these little bumps that basically beads up the water, and then it just rolls off the leaf, cleaning the leaf as it goes. What about yours?
There's so many fascinating examples out there, aren't there? And I think so many of them are really inspiring and empowering. I think also what I like about some of them is that they take a real negative in the world and turn it into a positive. So, obviously nature's out there doing some incredible things on our behalf, doing quite a lot of heavy lifting for the future of humanity. But it's also in some ways, sort of against us a little bit. And I think there's an interesting example around the mosquito. Now, we all, obviously mosquitoes are responsible for, I don't know, millions of deaths a year through various diseases, and they're responsible for a lot of discomfort as well. If you're lucky enough to be bitten without any particular infection. But actually, when you think about it, it is an incredible concept because you don't actually really feel the mosquito sting you, and it's only afterwards when you suddenly realize that you've been stung. So, again, some very clever individuals like, hang on, how do they do that? How do they insert the proboscis into the skin and leave without any sense of any real trace? And of course, that's now been adapted into sort of seamless needle design, allowing people to give, much needed injections without any discomfort whatsoever. Now, I mean, you could argue, hey, look, we can all handle a bit of a prick from a needle, and obviously in certain scenarios, whether it's with children or animals or whatever it may be, you really want to reduce the stress of that. So I think that's a lovely example. There's some other really kind of significant ones as well. When you think about the probably the most famous one is the one around the bullet trains in Japan. Do you know of this?
Please tell me. I love the story every single time I hear it.
Yeah, I think, and forgive me if I don't capture this quite right, but I think obviously bullet trains, as per their name, fly at incredible pace, and I think one of the key issues is as they hit tunnels. And obviously, tunnels typically exist. I mean, obviously in mountainous areas, but also you'd get tunnels in urban areas because you simply need to pass under or through, built-up environments. And I think as the bullet trains hit tunnels, there's a compression of air within the tunnel entrance, and because it's moving so fast, you almost get like a gunshot type sound, like a sort of a bullet shot sound. And of course, if you're a local resident living near that, it becomes an issue in terms of noise pollution. So there was a investigation into this to try and understand how could you reduce the impact of that. Again, it's easy to turn to wind tunnels, etc., and really start to explore. I don't know, maybe try and source understanding from F1 or from, I don't know, space travel, etc. But the designers involved in this turned to the natural world and specifically to kingfishers. And kingfishers are able to dart through the air and, more importantly, dart through water without really any drag, any real slowdown. And of course, without drag, it means you reduce noise. So if you look at the nose of today's bullet train, it is changed and it is very much mimicking the shape and style of a kingfisher's beak, reducing drag, so allowing the train to move at the same pace, if not a little faster, and allowing it to cut through the air and, more importantly, through tunnels with minimal impact and minimal sound. So a lovely solution, just entirely born of the natural world.
I love that. The first time I'd heard of it, I couldn't believe it, and it drove me like into like the whole like the shape of it, the physics of it, and it's incredible just how precise nature is, and kudos to the humans obviously who turn to nature for inspiration as well. Speaking of birds, I feel like we can let's at least do a couple of more of these because birds inspire us so much. As part of the research, I came across this post of a person saying, if we didn't have birds, if we didn't see birds, would we be flying? I mean, obviously, so much of aerodynamic design, the wings of the plane, the flaps of it, is inspired and borrowed from birds. But something new that I learned is about how woodpeckers are safe from concussions, or well, they don't hurt their head pecking the wood. I didn't think of it, but I'm like, yes, how is a bird's head okay when it's constantly pecking? And turns out the brain of the woodpecker, it's like everybody else's brain, it's in the slosh. There's like a jelly kind of liquid that our brains kind of sit in. It's I might be getting it wrong, so
I don't know if
if
slosh is the technical term, but yeah, or jelly even.
but that's incredible because the design of the woodpecker's brain is such that when the impact happens, that slosh fills up that area so that there is no impact on the brain. So basically, it does something to there's a connection to the neck and the brain, and that slush kind of fills up that gap. So the impact of that pecking on the very hard surface has no effect on the brain, and that mechanism has now been introduced into helmets that kind of sit around your neck and help you compress that area as well to help you protect yourself that kind of impact, which is incredible. I do not know the mechanics of this next example, but it's incredible to me that the designer of one of our easiest wearing shoes was inspired by nature. The creator of the Velcro. He apparently was taking a walk in nature with his pup, and when they came back, they found some whatever the material is stuck to their shoes, and he went back to it, and they worked with it, and that's how Velcro was born.
Yeah, those birds can be incredible. I mean, I have a dog, as you know, and she's very kind of low flying in terms of her tummy. And if you're not careful, you can come back with some serious burrs caught in her fur.
Oh,
And I mean, it might as well be glue or chewing gum or something. The way those things absolutely knot into, and it's a miracle really to think that that level of traction has been sort of woven into this design. And of course that's what successful kind of propagation of seeds and it's genius, but dangerous in the wrong context. But it just shows you how functional, how clever that is. And I challenge anyone to create any man-made substance that could be that tacky, and that a bit just the ability to kind of sort of burrow itself in. It's amazing. It's one of the examples that I picked out as well because it's just so clever. There's another thing I wanted to touch on. I mean, I think that the birds thing is really interesting because obviously in the hands of the right sort of the right person, a scientist, an engineer, etc. Someone like Da Vinci, that kind of observation can really literally fly. But even just for us, the mere mortals, we see birds in the air, and it does make flying much more clearly aspirational, I guess, something that we can see can happen. And I think it makes things like air flight and air travel that much more kind of, I don't know, approachable and something that we can really kind of conceive of because we see it all day, every day. So it's an interesting thing, I think, about, there's visibility in terms of a scientist being inspired, but there's also visibility in terms of people being educated and sort of broadly understanding that this is an opportunity. Otherwise, I think we would be pretty freaked out by the concept of sort of leaving the ground, but we are just immersed in it. And again, I think that's Mother Nature's way of really trying to kind of educate and embed an understanding in a sort of a mass populace. Does that make sense?
It does. But I feel like I don't know if you've got more examples that you would like to discuss. There is one that is related to freaking out that.
Go for it. Sounds
Yes,
interesting.
okay. Well, it is. So this is our first time living in India during the summer. We've usually been here during the monsoon, so we were not prepared for the ecosystem that exists during summertime. And so it turns out, because of the heat outside, a lot of the critters are driven inside.
I come in. Yeah,
So
yeah, that's
yes.
true.
So obviously we were sharing the space with them, so we do not want to kill them. I work very hard on my on suppressing my killer instincts, but sometimes it's just
I think
very
karma.
annoying.
I think karma is the killer.
Yes, yes, but I'm not usually always successful, and that is how I've killed a lot of ants this summer. A lot of tiny little black ants, and so. I don't mind sharing my food with you, but like you stick to you stick to the grains and the little tidbits I leave. You do not come for the entire plate. If you do, I get mad, and so that's what happened. And so at some point, after like killing and sweeping away and cleaning again, those guys came back, and so I got really mad and I started leaving the dead bodies around as a warning to the others. But here's
Yeah.
the thing, though.
Sorry, go on.
What?
Well, I was going to say there's different philosophies around this because you're right. Leaving the bodies out is a really good deterrent. What I like to do is to because if it's tiny little ants, like obviously bigger critters, I don't want to touch them because again, I worry about the ethics of it, but also yeah, just generally, I think you need to try and live somewhat symbiotically with them because the bigger guys will take out the smaller ones, and they're not there for your food necessarily. They're there for the ants or whatever. So it could almost work perfectly as a little ecosystem. But with the ants, yeah, there's different schools of thought. Do you mutilate them, clean up? Do you mutilate them, leave them? Yes, to give a sense of that deterrent. What I quite like to do is mutilate, but then spare one, because I figure you need one to tell the tale of destruction. So he typically runs away, and I like to think that he's just full of fear and terror in his eyes, and it's going to be like, guys, you will not believe what happened over there. Whatever you do,
Oh my God.
no one head that way.
Yes. See, that makes logical sense, and initially that is why I tried to let the ones that were a little farther away, like higher up the wall, to do that too. So I kind of get that. Turns out ants are very pragmatic. So after a while, I started realizing that the dead bodies were getting cleaned away. I thought it was like somebody else in my family doing it. They're like, "Oh, what is this? That makes no sense." But no, the ants collect their dead, and they build a foundation as a base layer to build on. So as a way of securing their future survival. So that is why they used to drag their dead bodies back. So those dead bodies that are left there, or like the little bits or whatever there is, and even in nature, if an ant home is destroyed, ants that are dead or that have been to decayed, whatever, they are not disposed of. They are used to build a layer that the other ants then build on. And that is how they survive. That is
That is
how,
like the ultimate in resourcefulness. I mean, it's a little, yeah,
yeah,
morbid and grotesque, but I
yes.
guess, matter is matter, and does it matter? So,
It is
yeah.
grotesque and freaky, 100%. But it's also so sensible because I
Mm.
mean, why would you not? I mean, if you like you said, it's an entire ecosystem of one being the food for the other, and then finding fuel and something else. And so there's a belief that if you see a lizard in and around your house, it's a good symbol. It's a sign of good luck. And turns out it was born out of this fact that if the lizard is there, it's eating up all of the little critters that are there as well. So, maybe there are spiders or maybe there are cockroaches, maybe I don't know whatever exists, but that's what the lizards feed on. And so that's why you're not supposed to ever kill them because they're the kind of good kind of house pets. They take care of the other little bugs and stuff that you might not want to deal with or you can't deal with.
Exactly. I mean, I lived for a little time in Australia, and there were some massive spiders that would sort of come into your home, as you say. If the temperature went up, they would, suddenly retreat indoors, and suddenly you're staring them down in your living room. And again, as a clueless Brit, I was hell bent on trying to destroy them. But all my kind of chilled Aussie mates would be like, "No, no, no, no. They're your friend. They're going to keep away the snakes, even this thing, this that." So yeah, you almost have to just learn to live with them. And again, this is the message of the pod, isn't it? It's about symbiosis. It's about living side by side, and in so doing, living a much more successful, functional, and balanced, sustainable, in every meaning of the term, sustainable future.
Absolutely, man, and I love that we've gotten to this because I think if we do look at applying the lessons that nature has to offer in our world today, one of the biggest things that we can do as a global collective, our entire problems of our world can be tied back to capitalism. It does seem like the answers are not in the linear economy. The way our current economies are built, it's a part of the linear economy. It is you take, make, and dispose. So you take from the nature, you take from the people, you make something with it, you use it, whatever, and then you dispose of it. And more often than not, dispose is not with grace, dispose is not with dignity, dispose is a landmine. Dispose is ship it off to another country, push it away to lands and seas far away from our places. So we're in the clear. We haven't done anything, and it's somebody else's problem. And because it is man-made and it's not natural, there isn't much you can do with it. Plastics, for instance, is one of the biggest byproduct of a linear economy, and there's so much of it, and we still don't know what to do with it. The
Yeah.
answer to that, borrow from nature, would be the circular economy,
Mm.
which is just like we started talking about it right at the start about how nature is conscious. I mean, so Janine talks about, she has this a lovely quote that says, "Life creates conditions conducive to life." That is life. That is the way nature creates in the world. She doesn't create to stop and deter somebody else or some other a creation or organism to stop from existing or living. She creates life to create more life. I don't know if this is true, but turns out the world has gone through this before. At least Japan has. The Edo period in Japan leading up to it was a disaster zone where there were just wars being raged and natural resources were consumed, and it was shelled down into nothingness of the natural ecosystem. And the Edo period apparently started by doing what they called a tree census, where they looked at how many trees exist in Japan at that moment. And they started intentionally rebuilding. Japan, as we know today, it's beautiful. It's whole with nature in many ways, in their architecture, in their design, in their products, in their humans, in their services. That wasn't always the case. And there's a book by Ashby Brown called Just Enough that talks about this, about how it starts with the people and choosing to make those choices to rebuild sustainably, to build with intent, to build with consciousness, like you mentioned. And what feel many years down the line, we can see that Japan truly is back to being in sync with nature, and is an absolute treasure trove of so much that nature has to offer. And so the circular economy is a part of that, where you take resources, you take people, you take initiative to create something that is for the whole, that feeds the whole, and then gives back to the whole as well. It's not about just consumption. It's not about just exploitation. It's generative. It's about creating something to create more with and give back to the nature, to give back. And I think, I mean, one of the only examples that I could find, Matt, it's sad that I heard this example a few years ago, and this is still the only example that I can find, is of Philips. What Philips was exploring within the circular economy was they own the bulb, like, so the light bulb, the Philips light bulb, they own the bulb, you rent it and you bring it into your house, you use it, and once it goes out, you don't buy another one. You basically, Philips comes in, replaces it, and they reuse the raw material from the old light bulb to build new ones. And that is the only example that I can think of in the world, applied today as a circular economy. You would think, the massive destruction that is going on. I know we said we're not going to talk about the pumpkin spice, but the an entire wing of the White House has been destroyed. And I don't think there was any kind of initiative done to preserve any of the bits to reuse again. I'm sure there was wood stuff that could have been reused. I'm sure there was structural base stuff that could have been reused, but that was not the intent, because the demolition needed to happen in 3 days. And so circular economy, the kind of nature, the way nature operates, requires us to be intentional and thoughtful and sustainable. The word sustainable, it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes intent to make something that is built to last. That is what nature is. Nature has existed for all of these millennia. It's because it was built to last. It was not built to just use and just, throw away and move on to another planet, because, we have the entire galaxy to conquer.
Amazing. I loved it. All that you said there. Circular economy was one of my examples. It was kind of the ultimate expression, I think, of biomimicry. Really, is that we kind of recognize that we're surrounded by this, as you say, regenerative ecosystem, and that we could be embracing that ourselves. And as you say, we're not. And there are very few examples. And I reference back to that Jane Goodall quote at the beginning. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And whether it's at light bulb level or beyond, these are the things we could all be doing. We could all be taking on, being inspired by nature, being inspired by the circular economy, and really trying to play our part in that cycle, and and taking from it and then giving back to it in equal parts. And I think that is absolutely critical. You also mentioned conscious design and conscious living, and that sense of really just being aware. And I think that's starting to become more of a sort of mandate in the world. I think in society and in communities, I see it happening here in the UAE. Actually, there's a lot more reference around conscious design and conscious living, and I also see now a push towards sort of mindfulness living as well, mindful living. And I don't know if you're aware of Bhutan's big push around sort of building mindful cities. So they're kind of trying to really prioritize cultural and environmental values and fold those into future developments and future cities. So they have this mindful city project. And it really helps existing cities foster well-being and kind of build emotional intelligence through kind of grassroots efforts. And it's interesting, I'm aware of that because I'm working with Abu Dhabi developers who are actually involved in connecting into that. And Abu Dhabi, or ADGM, which is a key institution in Abu Dhabi, is actually kind of involved in building some of the legal frameworks around Bhutan's mindful city projects. So, the hope is that we can start in UAE to borrow some of those values and infuse some of that into the future of Abu Dhabi and the UAE as well. And who knows over time, if that's happening in Bhutan, that's happening in Abu Dhabi, these things can grow. But like you said, like I said, this isn't just about waiting for top-down evolution and adoption of a more mindful, a more symbiotic, and a more conscious way. We should all be thinking about this, and we should all be looking to nature and understanding how can we be inspired by this circular opportunity and really play our part, because it's really only when it connects into the everyday and the everyone that it really starts to make an impact.
Absolutely, Matt. I love that. Mindfulness is absolutely the key to being conscious of the way we live and the choices that we make, for sure. So certainly intent, it's not a lost cause. We're here to but we certainly believe, we hope that our choices will make the difference. And if there are enough of us doing that, I think we can certainly reclaim some of the nature that we've lost, and turn back the time on the climate change and the climate extremes that we're facing at the moment. I don't know if you had anything else to talk about in this regard, Matt. I love the co-designing aspect of nature and architecture, and that is going to continue to be one of the areas that I focus on. But there are more and more people who are going to need homes. There are more and more people who are going to need to move into urban cities, and it's up to us as creators, it's up to us as designers, it's up to us as architects and design leaders and creative people to be the voice of reason, to be the voice of Mother Nature, and to be the voice of humanity in the face of all of the tech bros thinking AI is the one true solution to everything that this world needs.
Yeah, and just like you say, they're going to put all of these solutions are going to be pushed at us, but we have a choice, and that's the really empowering thing. This is a conscious choice that we can make to really seek out alternative, more rooted solutions, beyond the tech bro products and services. So, as you say, we should all just be making that choice for ourselves and really trying to cumulatively make a difference over time.
Yes, exactly. On that note, we're going to ask you, listeners and viewers, to please share with us and share with your friends and family the need for this. What are the conscious choices that you make in your life, in your everyday work, in your everyday routines that brings you closer to nature and puts her first and services her? What are some of the ways that you're generous in your ways of giving back to nature? We would love to hear those, and perhaps get this message further out than just the two of us. Matt, thank you so much for selecting this topic.
Thank you for taking it on so well. I think some really interesting inputs there, so thanks so much.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to this conversation. For more, you can always find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We will be back again with another wonderful episode, and we hope to see you there. Take care.
Take care. See you next week.
Bye.